Remember when I told you we were getting into the silly season with mock drafts? Yeah, we're in the middle of it. But like I've said with all mock drafts, don't worry about the specific names by and large, because there are a million of them out there. What they are is basically kind of a finger on the pulse. Taken as a whole, you have an opportunity to get an idea of what people around the country who cover their teams are hearing, what national media members who have a little more clout and a little more pull to talk to multiple teams at once are hearing. But in general, going for the specifics is unwise because people like playing poker with it. They like trying to indicate that they're going to do something else, and coaches at times and GMs think they're too clever by half, and they're going to find some sort of way to fool everybody. Despite the fact that you'll hear how everyone studies everything and there are no secrets in the NFL, everybody's still bent on fooling everybody, which is fine. Some people are able to do it. But even Bill Belichick got outfoxed by Mike Vrabel using his own technique in the playoffs. So looking at mock drafts, there is a value to it. Look at John Elway last year. Now, everybody in the media believed they were going to go inside linebacker. They were thinking, okay, wow, Devin Bush was sitting right there. We're going to scoop him right up. That's what the Broncos are going to do. They didn't. You'll notice that prior to the draft, too, John Elway didn't talk too much about needing to shore up inside linebacker. He did talk about the tight end position. He talked about how important it was to him as a player, talked about the need for it, help round out their offense. It shouldn't have been a huge surprise that that's where they went. When the Broncos selected Bradley Chubb at number 5, that wasn't a secret in the slightest. Everyone knew that. It was basically if Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield dropped to 5, Elway was going to pick one of those two. And if they didn't, if they're both gone, he was going to pick Bradley Chubb. It was not a secret. The only question is if, for some reason, the Browns would throw a fly in the ointment. They didn't. They picked Denzel Ward, leaving Chubb for the Broncos. All knew that was where they were going to go. In the 2017 draft, everyone knew the Broncos were going to get a tackle. Most people hoped it would be Ryan Ramczyk. It wasn't, but it was Garrett Bowles. They knew where they were going to go. When Paxton Lynch was selected, everyone knew the Broncos were going to try to get a quarterback. They did that too. Elway really, to his credit, has enough swagger and confidence that he basically doesn't mess around with the mind games because he doesn't, to his credit, get fooled by the idea that they work. They really don't. Everybody who's a GM, look, let's just think about it this way, right? I feel like the guy who's telling you the magic trick. For some people, they hate that, explaining how the magic trick works because people they want to believe. They want to believe that guy just yanked the curtain away and all of a sudden there was a llama behind it where there wasn't a llama before. So I'm going to tell you how the magic trick really gets done. That stuff is for the media. It's for us. It's for us to consume and us to tell you because it's entertaining. If you're the general manager in an NFL team, even including Bill O'Brien, remember, there's only 32 jobs of these, okay? People aren't terrible at it for the most part. Even Bill O'Brien has a general idea of how you should build a football team. Because we can laugh at O'Brien all we want. And look, it's admittedly pretty easy to do. Don't get me wrong. He makes it really easy. But do you know who won the AFC South last year? Do you know who won the AFC South in 2018? That's the Texans. Bill O'Brien's team. They won it the last 2 years. They won it in 2016 as well. They also won it in 2015. Make as much fun as you'd like, but here's the catch. Bill O'Brien does some really foolish things as a GM. He's also the division winner the last 4 out of the last 5 years. So if you're an NFL GM, we all know how much money the teams have left under the cap, right? We all know how much money each player makes. We all know all the contract information. So we all know all that stuff about every team. If you're an NFL GM, you look at that roster and say, okay, what would I do? At the end, there are different ones. The old joke, of course, is what do you call the person who finished as the last in their graduating class of medical school? The answer is doctor. You can go to a bunch of different doctors, and here's the catch. If you're sick with a cold, you can go to 25 different doctors. 24 of them, if not all 25 of them, will tell you you have a cold. GMs know how to GM, and they'll look at the opponents, and as long as you have the information, which they do, if we do, they do, right? You have a pretty good idea of where teams are going to go in every case. Now, you may not know exactly which players they prefer, but you do know where their needs are. You do know where their money is allotted. You do know the caliber of players they have. You can scout them just like everybody else. You can look at who might be coming into a draft or free agency. GMs generally know what other teams are doing. They just don't know the specifics. And they can, by and large, bring it down to a reasonable guess of one or two different moves. So there's not that much trickery to go around. Elway, to his credit, doesn't mess with it. He's basically telegraphed. He's like, hey, here's our needs. You can pretty much count on him to do his best to address those needs. He's done that every time. Now, does he hit all the time? No. Sometimes you pick Garrett Bowles. But he knew the need was tackle, and he went for a tackle, and he talked about going for a tackle. He just didn't get the right tackle. That happens. I don't necessarily blame people when the guy doesn't work out. Now, in certain cases, you can. For example, if you're the Cowboys and you're signing Aldon Smith from almost 5 years out of football, signing him away from the Broncos, mind you, that would have been a mistake you could criticize. I wouldn't have picked Garrett Bowles. I would have picked Ryan Ramczyk. But Ryan Ramczyk, by the way, plays right tackle. Now, he's still better than Bowles. But Elway addressed the position in the draft, in the year he needed to address it in the draft. Just didn't quite get the right guy. He fell for the athlete instead of the player. Well, the bright side is you look over the last couple of years, Elway stopped doing that, the Aldon Smith dalliance notwithstanding. He's been going after players before he's going after athletes. That's a great sign. Started turning the Broncos in the right direction. When you go for athletes over players, sometimes you swing and you miss entirely, and that's how you have problems with depth. If you've been watching the Broncos over the last couple of years, the fans who have been confused when they look at why the Broncos have underperformed, like I said, the last 3 years, I've had it nailed. I've had the Broncos' predicted record exactly right the last 3 years. Now, some of that's luck. I'm not going to tell you I have a crystal ball, but I have a pretty good idea. I've been doing this long enough that I have a pretty good idea of where teams are going to go down because I look at their records from the previous years. I look at their talent. I look at their coaching staffs. The best predictor of the future is recent past history. Elway's recent past history is getting the Broncos depth. Prior to that, he didn't, and the Broncos didn't have depth. Their starters over the past couple of years, you looked at it, really haven't been disastrous, but they have no depth. So somebody gets hurt, like Bryce Callahan, and you're stuck with who knows what playing cornerback. The way you get depth is you go after players instead of athletes, because the players may never be Pro Bowlers. The guys who were good players in college, the guys who were captains, the guy you don't question their work ethic, they may not be Pro Bowlers. But they're going to make your team, and they're going to get you depth, and they're going to know what they're doing if you have to put them in. That's the biggest part of this. So avoiding all the silliness and trying to outthink yourself is good. That's why this draft is fascinating to me. All the opportunities to outthink yourself, pro days, working out, coached interviews by guys that have been coached by their agents to say the exact right things, they're being minimized. So your chances of fooling yourself are being minimized. That's a good thing. That means for the Broncos, they're going to be in a better position than normal, and they've been trending in the right direction. Trades are going to happen. Should the Broncos be looking to make some? If so, where will they be looking to make them? I want to remind you, by the way, that with all the challenges with the coronavirus pandemic, a lot of people are struggling for food. And we're working with 9 Cares Colorado Shares. King Soopers virtual food drive is now presented by Oakwood Homes. This will benefit the Food Bank of the Rockies, where there is desperate need of emergency funds. Now, I've worked at the Food Bank for years. I'm part of one of their committees. They are near and dear to my heart because they do a brilliant job. $1 feeds 4 different families a meal. 4 meals for $1. That's the kind of purchasing power and what they're able to do at the food bank. So you don't have to contribute very much to really help people out. You can think about how that shakes out. $20 basically feeds a family of 3 for a week. That's it. And you can help. Contribute now at 1043thefan.com/food drive. That's 1043thefan.com/food drive. From 9 Cares Colorado Shares, King Soopers, Oakwood Homes, and Food Bank of the Rockies. Where could the Broncos make a trade? Where should they make a trade? How far up is too far up? We'll discuss all that next. Who likes mock drafts? We all sort of like mock drafts. I mean, there's been a lot of them. We all sort of like it. But you know what we like even more? Trades. Trades are even more fun than the draft, right? Well, predicting. Right, Dylan just gave me a look through the glass. He's like, no. You like the draft more than trades? Trades to me are always more surprising. I always like a trade.
I love the trades that happen in the draft. Really.
I just like trades. I like trades more than drafts. I think trades are more interesting. Well, you know what could be good then, like you were saying, draft with trades, which is what happens every year, of course, right? Keep this in mind. Last year, out of the 32 picks in the first round, 12 of them were made by a team that didn't originally hold the pick. It's more than a third. My math is right. Yeah, my math is right. Yeah. Be 10 and 10.6 would be, yeah, so more than that. Yeah. More than a third. Man, don't make me do math at 11:30 on a Monday night.
I had to break out the fingers and toes
to
figure that one out.
But that's where that goes. I mean, you run into a lot of trades in a draft, especially in the first round. And you look at the teams that really kind of hold on to them and the teams that don't. We know that the Patriots, we know the Seahawks, they like to trade down. We know teams like the Bears generally like jumping up for one person. You know, the Texans don't think they're valuable at all. They just sort of, whatever picks. I'm Bill O'Brien. I don't know what I'm going to do, by the way, if Bill O'Brien just nails this draft. I'm going to be totally confused. So I'm probably making sure that's going to happen right now. I'm poking all this fun at him, and we're going to come after this draft and go, wow, Bill O'Brien just did an amazing job through this draft. Just nailed everybody. It's going to happen. You watch. No, it won't. What am I saying? It won't happen. Anyway, Bill Barnwell of ESPN decided to just lean. It's snowy outside. I mean, just Han Solo, both hands into the tauntaun, scooping out mock drafts with trades in it. He decided to just go all the way in there, and every pick in his mock draft has a trade. Now, obviously, that is not going to happen, and that's just crazy. Nevertheless, it's an interesting idea, right? Because again, when you're looking at the mock drafts and you start to look at it and think, all right, but these particular players, don't think about the players. Don't think about the exact players. Think about mock drafts. Think about what the positions mean. Think about where the values are for these certain teams. That's the trick. In Barnwell's case, he has the Broncos, rather surprisingly, in my opinion, trading up. And trading up a decent distance, to be completely honest, in order to go get a tackle. Trading with the Jaguars to go get a tackle. Now, that's a big leap upwards. Obviously, I believe the Broncos should be getting a tackle. In Barnwell's example, he said that the Broncos would give up their 15th overall pick and two of their thirds, the 77 and the 83, to move up 6 spots to number 9 and pick up a 6th rounder from Jacksonville. Because they'd want to move up and grab one of those 4 tackles. Barnwell says he believes that there's only a 5% chance of any of the top 4 tackles being there at number 15. I'm guessing it's a little more than that, but maybe not much. It's so fluid. And of course, if you do get trades, like we talked about, on average, a little more than 1 out of every 3 in the first round gets dealt. So that could change things. But as I also pointed out, a blindside tackle is the second hardest position to find in the NFL. So those guys tend to be draft targets and trade targets. Nevertheless, I look at that trade and I look at the hypothetically and say, should the Broncos give up their 2/3 to move up 6 spots? And my instinct is no, probably not, and absolutely not. Wouldn't even think about it. I mean, that would be a Tyler Polumbus goodness no type situation. Yeah, except I can't do it quite that intensely, so I'll leave that to Tyler. I mean, that's what they should not be doing. I don't really have a problem with the Broncos trading up. And I've talked about this before. But if I'm the Broncos, I am not trading up more than 2 or 3 spots max. We did our mock draft earlier for the Fan Late Night, our version 1. We'll do version 2 next Monday, where Dylan and I picked top 15 picks, and we did it live without checking with each other. Well, in this particular scenario, things went a little sideways for the 49ers, who ended up picking T. Higgins and had to stretch to go get a wide receiver. Now, if I'm the Broncos and Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills, Andrew Thomas, I have my preference, but any of the 4 would be better than Garrett Bowles. If one of those guys was there at 13 and there was only one left, if I'm John Elway, I'm calling my old buddy John Lynch and asking what he needs. What do you need to move back a couple spots? You wanted the wide receiver's not there. So you could trade back a couple spots and still get your wide receiver or whatever else you want to get, but I want that tackle. What does it cost me? And it probably doesn't cost you 2 third-round picks to move up 2 spots. So if I'm the Broncos, I look at that. But you have to realistically look at who's drafting ahead of them, right? Tampa is going to want a lineman badly, so you might have to jump them. San Francisco might be a team that's willing to trade down. They're not in desperate need of things. They really like the wide receiver, but they're not in desperate need. They're the defending NFC champions. The Raiders aren't going to trade with you. Be honest about this. They're not going to do that. The Jets would really like to get one of those wide receivers, and they probably can't afford to trade back and get one. So they're not going to do that. Cleveland is after the same thing you are. A tackle. They're not going to trade back. So that means what Barnwell is suggesting, and when you look at it, he's right. The teams ahead of the Denver Broncos who'd be willing to trade, the Niners at 13, and then probably the next one is Jacksonville at 9. I think that's where Barnwell's onto something. So realistically, unless the Broncos want to give up the farm to trade way up, your trading partner going forward is the Niners at 13, or you're just going to have to accept whatever falls to you at 15. Realistically, I think that's what you're talking about. So if I'm the Broncos, I'm staying agile. I want to be ready to make a trade. I want to be ready to consider a trade. And I want to be ready to move up. But I don't want to pay what it's going to cost to move up to 9, because what I think Barnwell's talking about, to move up 6 spots, we're talking about the Broncos' 2 third-round picks at the latter half of the 3rd round. That's probably what it would cost. The Broncos need more than one guy. This is a team that does not have a lot of depth. That's what doomed them more than anything last year. Maybe you're not getting ace starters in the 3rd round, but you can expect to get starters out of the 3rd round. But at minimum, you better get guys to make the team out of the 3rd round. The Broncos would be getting 2 guys who should make their roster in the 3rd round. I'm not giving 2 of them up to move up 6 spots. Now, if I knew I could get, say, Andrew Thomas, if I gave up that 83rd overall pick to swap with the Niners, okay, I'll do that. The old bird in the hand thing, right? But moving up to 9, no. If I'm the Broncos, I'm more likely to trade down than I am to trade up. And the truth of the matter is I'm more likely to stay put than I am to trade down. There's another week and a half to find out. But I think that's where the Broncos sit as of today. The Time Machine is next. Like we do every night, it's an opportunity to talk about some of the great moments in sports history, significant moments in sports history. It's even more fun to do now that, we don't have any sports going on. So a little bit of nostalgia ends up being fun. Of course, this would require one of our listeners, and if you're out there and you remember this, one, thanks for listening, because we're going to go back to 1939. Back in 1939, Lou Gehrig was still continuing his playing streak. And the long playing streak that, of course, earned him the nickname the Iron Horse and was eventually broken by Cal Ripken Jr. But on this date in 1939, it was obvious that something was wrong with Lou Gehrig. And he finished spring training in 1939 without a single home run. At one point in spring training, he had collapsed. And he had a moment on this date in 1939 where he hit 2 home runs in an exhibition game they had played in between spring training and the beginning of the season, which was April 20th, and they did that in Virginia. He had hit 2 home runs on this date. Only a few weeks later, on April 30th, he played his 2,130th consecutive Major League game. He then benched himself on May 2nd, and, of course, what came next, we all remember. Gehrig, of course, had been diagnosed with what we now call oftentimes Lou Gehrig's disease, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And Gehrig took himself out, benched himself on May 2nd, stopping that 2,130th consecutive game streak. When it appeared that happened, by the way, the Tigers, they were playing in Detroit. The Tigers and their fans gave Gehrig a standing ovation while he sat on the bench when the Yankees took the field in the first inning because they realized what had happened, which is pretty spectacular. Obviously, Gehrig passed away from that disease shortly thereafter. So on this date, one of the last great moments for Lou Gehrig, 2 home runs in an exhibition game. Sticking with baseball, in a more positive moment, back in 1954. This hasn't happened in baseball, but it happened back then. Willie Mays came back from 2 years of serving in the military. And after that, in 1954, he had an opportunity to win the game that day, coming back from there. It was a game-winning homer against the Dodgers. Of course, that season ended with one of the more memorable highlights in baseball history. Remember, by the way, if you can and if you know about it, that happened at the end of the season, 1954, Game 1 of the '54 World Series against Cleveland. He caught that ball in deep center off of Vic Wertz. The Polo Grounds was a very strangely shaped park. It was shaped more like a football stadium. It was a long, weird oval. So a really, really strange spot. And when you look at a diagram of the Polo Grounds, it was very, very peculiar. The depth in straightaway center field, by the way, was listed at about 483. And so Mays made that catch going way, way, way back. Pulled that play in at the end of 54. By the way, the amazing part is Willie Mays, about a career. When was asked to look back on it in the 70s, he didn't think it was the best defensive play he'd ever made. Yikes. Go a little bit forward. Let's go to the sport of hockey, where one of the all-time greats had his final regular season game. Did he drop a little? Was that a little Super Mario Brothers? That's a Mario. Is that? that what he did? That was a pretty slick call there. Mario Lemieux finished his final season in the NHL, final regular season on this date. Obviously had, and then, by the way, spent a few years away and then came back. Came back after a few years for those campaigns. Came back in 2000. Had the illness, got through the illness, then came back all the way. He was able to play until 2006. So the break there for Lemieux for a disease that he ended up beating, cancer, taking over the Hodgkin's lymphoma, and was able to best that and come back and play for another few years. Not necessarily, of course, at the same great level, but he had a 35-goal season and a 28-goal season. His final two seasons prior to the break, 69 and 50 respectively, leading the league in points 4 out of the final 5 years before taking that break. And a more recent one, and a bit bittersweet, obviously, following this spring. But this future Hall of Famer this summer played his final game, and it was one to remember in 2016. Kobe Bryant goes for 60 in his final game. Unbelievable. That was a phenomenal performance. I remember watching that and kind of not believing it was happening. Just an unbelievable performance. And look, you can make the argument that maybe it was a bit of a ball hog night. I get it. Who cares? And I normally am not the kind of guy that says that, but who cares? Didn't make any difference. There was, by the way, a conspiracy theory for a while after that the Jazz kind of took it easy on him. And at one point you could tell because Bryant scored this 59th and 60th point from the free throw line. He got him on the stripe. Mike Tirico at the time pointed out that Kobe Bryant stepped into the lane when Kobe was shooting that second free throw. Tirico suggested that Hayward intentionally committed a lane violation to give him another shot at 60 in case he missed. Because, of course, you'd wave it off and get another crack at it. Hayward said specifically, no, that is not the case. Said, it has also come to my attention. There's a story going around tonight about an intentional lane violation I took to ensure Kobe would get his 60th point in his final game and are applauding me for the gesture. But the fact of the matter is that's not true. That was a night I will truly never forget as I can remember competing every moment of it. And my goal that night was to compete as hard as I possibly could against Kobe because that's what he was all about, and I wanted to give him my best. He got 60 on me, and I didn't give him anything free all night. What happened if the free throw wasn't intentional? Kobe would have lost respect for me if I gave him something for free. That's what made him special. I'm honored to have shared our time on and off the court together. Well, it's been an honor to be with you for the last couple hours. And chilly spring Monday in Colorado. So stay warm, stay inside, stay safe. Thanks a bunch to all of our folks who are keeping things running, our grocery workers, our delivery drivers, our first responders, medical professionals, truck drivers, everybody who's out there doing the hard work. You're out there late at night. Hopefully we provided a little bit of fun for you. And Dylan Condon, and I will do it for you again tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Got the draft coming up. Just a week and change away. We'll stay right on top of it right here at the Fan Late Night. I'm Sean Drotar. Friends at Sports Center All Night are next.